Welcome to History Channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. After the air raid on September 2, 1944, Warsaw's Napoleon Square lay in ruins, its once proud buildings reduced to rubble, smoke rising into the war-torn sky. The devastation reflected the immense suffering of the city's residents as they resisted occupation during the Warsaw Uprising, a defining moment of courage and tragedy. In Baghdad, 1998, murals of Saddam Hussein dominated the cityscape, painted across walls as symbols of power and propaganda. These larger-than-life images sought to project strength and control, reinforcing the personality cult that surrounded him during years of sanctions, war, and unrest that defined Iraq in the late 20th century. The Japanese army publicly displayed the severed head of Yang Jingyu in 1940, a chilling attempt to suppress resistance. Yang, leader of the Northeast Counter-Japanese United Army, had fought fiercely against occupation. His execution and display were meant as warnings, yet his martyrdom inspired continued defiance across occupied Chinese territories. On September 2, 1945, General Douglas MacArthur read his speech aboard the USS Missouri, marking Japan's surrender. Behind him stood Allied representatives and the flag flown by Admiral Perry in 1853. Its presence symbolized America's enduring influence over Japan, from forced trade to total defeat, closing one era and opening another. Mid-1944 saw German Luftwaffe personnel standing beside a captured Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, the once mighty American bomber now a silent trophy, displayed near a hangar. Such scenes reflected the constant battle for air supremacy over Europe, where technology, strategy, and human endurance shaped the war's deadly outcome. In the mid-1960s, Innsbruck, Austria, showed a different kind of motion, traffic flowing through its alpine streets, cars and bicycles sharing the roads against a backdrop of mountains, the quiet rhythm of daily life contrasting with the city's wartime past, a reminder of Europe's recovery during an age of change. In 1922, Turkish soldiers posed after their fight in the War of Independence. Their weary but determined faces captured the spirit of a nation forging its identity. These men had helped secure freedom from foreign occupation, their sacrifices laying the foundation for the Republic of Turkey under Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. A young Chinese girl smiles warmly beside a soldier in February 1944. During the Second Sino-Japanese War, in a time of widespread suffering and occupation, such moments revealed the resilience of spirit. The soldier's uniform contrasted with the innocence of childhood, together symbolizing endurance, hope, and determination in wartime China. In 1982, HMS Conqueror flew the Jolly Roger after sinking the Argentine cruiser Belgrano during the Falklands War. It remains the only vessel sunk by a nuclear-powered submarine in combat. This controversial strike shifted naval dynamics, marking a turning point in the short but fierce conflict over the South Atlantic. In Iran, 1979, leftist revolutionaries of the Mujahideen-e-Khalq displayed their support for Ali Shariati and Ruhollah Khomeini, combining Islamist and Marxist ideals. The revolution united diverse factions against the Shah, though alliances would fracture. At that moment, their banners signaled a radical transformation sweeping across the nation and region. In 1938, leaders Rykov and Nikolai Bukharin, once influential Bolsheviks, were escorted to the Moscow trials, accused of treason and conspiracy. These highly publicized proceedings reflected Stalin's Great Purge, where political opponents and perceived threats were eliminated. The trials were staged spectacles, ending in executions that erased entire revolutionary legacies. Claude Hayes Jr., pictured with his wife Bobby, was killed in action in France on August 28, 1944, at just 31. His story reflected countless young men whose lives were cut short, leaving behind grieving families. His photograph serves as a solemn reminder of personal loss amid global war. The Hindenburg disaster struck on May 6, 1937. As the German airship ignited while docking in New Jersey, flames consumed a massive vessel in seconds, killing 36 people. The tragedy ended the era of passenger airships, its images and radio broadcasts searing the event into public memory worldwide. In October 1881, the bodies of Tom and Frank McLaury and Billy Clanton were displayed after the gunfight at the OK Corral, killed in a violent clash with Wyatt Earp, his brothers, and Doc Holliday. Their deaths marked a defining moment in the lawless legend of the American frontier. In 1930 in Berlin, Emperor Nicholas II of Russia stood beside King George V of Britain, cousins linked by royal blood, yet ruling nations soon to be at war. This gathering of monarchs foreshadowed the fragile ties of Europe's ruling houses before World War I redrew borders and ended empires. In the 1920s, Egon von Eichstätt photographed the people of Kerala, India, capturing faces, traditions, and attire with anthropological detail. These portraits documented cultural diversity during colonial rule, providing a window into everyday lives at a time when India's vast social and regional identities were often overlooked by foreign observers. In August 1941, German soldiers and Estonian civilians celebrated the capture of Tallinn from Soviet control. For some locals, the arrival of German forces meant liberation from harsh Soviet rule. Yet occupation would soon bring new hardships. The photograph reveals the complex layers of loyalty and suffering in wartime Estonia. In Mississippi, September 1955, Mose Wright bravely stood in court, pointing at Roy Bryant and J.W. Mullum as the men who kidnapped and murdered his nephew Emmett Till. His act of defiance against entrenched racial terror marked a pivotal moment in the civil rights struggle, exposing injustice before the world. In 1999, President Bill Clinton and Yasser Arafat opened Gaza International Airport in Rafah. The event symbolized a moment of hope for Palestinian self-determination. The facility was meant to connect Gaza with the world, yet within years, conflict and closure left it abandoned, a fleeting symbol of peace and possibility. In 1951, the Shah of Iran confirmed Parliament's nomination of Mohammad Mossadegh as Prime Minister. Mossadegh's leadership would challenge foreign control of oil and assert national sovereignty. His appointment marked the rise of a popular leader, though his tenure would later end in turmoil after the 1953 CIA-backed coup. In 1944, weary Marines stood in the pouring rain during the Battle of Guam, their faces marked by exhaustion, determination, and the toll of relentless fighting. The Pacific Campaign tested endurance as tropical storms, jungle terrain, and fierce resistance turned each advance into a grueling struggle for survival and victory. In 1945, Boeing B-17 flying fortresses of the 398th Bombardment Group approached their target over Neumünster, Germany. The formation symbolized Allied air power at its height. Waves of bombers struck industrial and military sites, devastating cities, and accelerating the collapse of Nazi Germany in the final months of the war. In 1972, Wellington, New Zealand, became the scene of protests against French nuclear testing in the Pacific. Demonstrators carried banners and marched in defiance, voicing concern for the environment and regional safety. Their actions joined a broader global movement that challenged the dangers of nuclear weapons during the Cold War. On August 28, 1945, Allied warships gathered in Sagami Bay, preparing for Japan's formal surrender, with Mount Fuji visible in the distance. The sight symbolized the end of years of devastating conflict. Fleets from across the world united in victory, marking a decisive moment before peace officially began. In 1931 Soviet Russia, peasant women gathered to learn reading and writing, part of mass literacy campaigns aimed at transforming rural society. Education was a central tool of modernization, empowering women and peasants while spreading ideological control. This photograph reflected the revolutionary promise and pressure of Soviet social reforms. By May 2003, Iraq's highways were littered with the wreckage of war, including abandoned T-72 Lion of Babylon tanks, symbols of Saddam Hussein's crumbling military. These once proud machines lay silent after the coalition invasion, a stark reminder of overwhelming firepower and the rapid collapse of Iraq's armed resistance during the war. On February 5, 1945, civilians in Manila fled their homes as Allied and Japanese forces clashed in residential streets. The battle turned neighborhoods into war zones. Families carried what little they could, desperation written on their faces. The city would endure some of the fiercest and most destructive fighting in Asia. On September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, Allied representatives gathered for Japan's surrender. Admiral Conrad L. Helfrich signed on behalf of the Netherlands. The ceremony marked the end of World War II, a solemn moment of closure witnessed under the gaze of the battleship's superstructure. In Congo, Brazzaville, August 15, 1963, President Fulbert Ulu told Charles de Gaulle he would resign. As angry crowds surrounded the palace, the independence leader's downfall highlighted tensions between old colonial ties and new African nationalism. His exit marked the turbulent shift in power that defined post-colonial African politics. In 1922, Hyman George Rickover appeared in his Naval Academy yearbook. A midshipman among peers, few could predict his future. He rose to become an admiral and the father of the nuclear navy, revolutionizing naval power with reactors that reshaped modern warfare and extended America's reach across oceans. In occupied Belarus, 1943, a Soviet child partisan held a captured German gun, the weapon larger than his frame. The image reflected both desperation and determination. Even children were drawn into the brutal struggle, their presence symbolizing the total war that scarred Eastern Europe under Nazi occupation. In 1950, a 23-year-old woman walked onto the U.S. Nationals courts, breaking racial barriers in tennis. Her name was Althea Gibson. Her entry transformed the sport, paving the way for generations of black athletes. Her courage extended beyond the game, striking at the heart of segregation in America. On June 17, 1986, Len Bias was drafted second overall by the Boston Celtics. 2 days later, he died of a cocaine overdose. His sudden death shocked the nation, highlighting the dangers of drugs, and fueled policy responses that intensified the government's war on drugs across America. On August 27, 1979, the body of Lord Mountbatten was carried ashore at Mullaghmore, Ireland. He had been pulled alive from the sea by fishermen after a bombing, but died before reaching land. His assassination by the IRA echoed across Britain and Ireland, symbolizing decades of conflict and bloodshed. In 1973, a portrait captured Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, 6 years before his overthrow. His rule ended over 2,500 years of monarchy. Toppled during the Islamic Revolution, the photograph stood as a reminder of fading power, soon replaced by Ayatollah Khomeini's fundamentalist government and lasting upheaval. In October 1937, Wallis Simpson and former King Edward met Adolf Hitler in Germany. Their controversial visit symbolized both scandal and suspicion. The abdicated king's ties to the Nazi regime raised concerns in Britain. The meeting became a lasting stain on their reputations during a time of looming global conflict. In 1937, Japanese forces staged a parade celebrating the fall of Nanjing. The city's capture marked one of the darkest chapters of the war in China. Behind the pageantry lay atrocities and suffering. The parade illustrated how military victories were used for propaganda, masking the brutal reality of conquest. On July 14, 1943, a B-17 Flying Fortress met a head-on attack from 3 German fighters. Gunners shot down 2. The third, flown by a dead pilot, crashed into the bomber's engine at deadly speed. The collision showed the chaos and sacrifice of air combat in World War II. On December 7, 1941, Americans gathered outside the White House after news of Pearl Harbor. Shock and fear filled the night as crowds looked for answers. The attack propelled the United States into World War II, forever altering its role in global conflict and cementing a moment of national unity. In October 1983, mobster Anthony "Tony the Ant" Spilotro left a Kansas City courthouse beside his lawyer, Oscar Goodman, later Las Vegas's mayor. Spilotro was notorious for organized crime connections. His appearance reflected the blurred lines between law, politics, and the underworld during a turbulent era in American cities. In February 1911, Charles Freer and companions visited Hangzhou, China, capturing images in Jiusu Garden on West Lake, a site shaped by Chan Buddhism. Chinese photographers documented serene landscapes and architecture. The glass plate negatives preserved cultural heritage during a period of political change and foreign encounters in China. On June 29, 1994, Princess Diana stunned the world in a black evening dress. Worn after Prince Charles admitted infidelity, the gown became known as the revenge dress, symbolizing her independence. The public gesture turned fashion into defiance, cementing Diana's legacy as both a royal figure and cultural icon. In December 1984, Akira Kurosawa directed his epic film Ran, with Mount Fuji looming in the distance. The legendary filmmaker worked meticulously on set, crafting a story of power and betrayal. The image captured his artistry and the blending of Japan's landscapes with cinematic vision at the peak of his career. On January 27, 1943, President Franklin D. Roosevelt visited Liberia, inspecting troops alongside President Edwin Barclay near Monrovia. The stop strengthened ties between the United States and Africa during World War II. Liberia's strategic airstrips played a vital role in Allied operations, bridging continents in the fight against Axis powers. In 1936, the city gate of Szydłów, Poland, stood as a historic landmark. The medieval structure guarded a town rich with heritage. Photographs captured its enduring presence before the devastation of war. Soon, much of Poland's cultural landscape would face destruction, making these images valuable windows into the past. In October 1938, a Hitler Youth member renamed a street in the Sudetenland, replacing Tomasz Mazurek's name with Adolf Hitler's. The act symbolized the erasure of Czechoslovak identity under German annexation. Small gestures like sign changes revealed the broader machinery of occupation and the reshaping of public space under Nazi rule. On November 16, 1958, The Swiss freighter MV9 ran aground on rocks at St. Abb's Head, Scotland. Waves battered the vessel as rescuers worked to save its crew. The wreck highlighted the dangers of maritime navigation, reminding coastal communities of the constant risks faced by merchant seamen at sea. In 1901, Italian engineer Guglielmo Marconi posed proudly with his invention, the radio. His breakthrough in wireless communication revolutionized global connectivity, transforming news, entertainment, and military strategy. Marconi's work laid the foundation for modern broadcasting, forever altering how humanity shared information across oceans and national boundaries. In 1938, Germany faced Switzerland in a World Cup replay. Their loss humiliated the regime that sought to use sport for propaganda. The defeated players left the field in silence. The moment reflected how even football could undermine political narratives, exposing vulnerability amid the push for dominance on the global stage.